this is Christina Barr. You're watching Black Tea News. Hello. Welcome to Black Tea News. I'm your host, Christina Barr, and today we're going to be talking about a bit about the Durham Report, but one thing I was really excited to talk about, excited, I guess, because it's just evidence, but it's sad, it's disgusting what I'm going to talk about, but there was an article that the Atlantic published with an interview with Hern, who's a very renowned late-term abortion doctor, which he doesn't like those terms, but you know, that's what he does, or part of largely what he does. And so a lot of people are under the impression that women don't, will only get late term for very serious medical situations. And that's not true. And that is evident within the article. So some things I want to address in it and talk about within the article. And also, tonight is the night I will be releasing my Riley Gaines interview. I know I was supposed to do it like last week, but there was a couple like audio things I had to work out. So, and I'm very busy getting ready for my weekend, which I will tell you guys in a moment what all I'm doing this weekend. And hope to see some of you maybe out there if you're in the Metro Detroit area. But in the meantime, before we jump into everything, I want to encourage you guys to go to blacktnews.com, check out different content on the website, different articles, videos, etc. If you like what I do here, please consider leaving a donation at blacktnews.com/donate. Cost to stream, cost to run my website, all that good stuff. So if you can support, and if you'd like to support, you can do it that way. Go to the website. If you're watching on Facebook, you can send stars. If you're watching on YouTube, you can do super chats. Another way to help is you can go to paypal.me/Black Tea News. Just /Black Tea News, and it'll do it. That's a very easy way to do it. But I thank you guys for watching, and thank you guys for streaming. Those who watch it live, those who watch it back later, those who comment, all that stuff does really help. So thank you very much. Also, this weekend I will be at Motor City Comic Con, so I will not be like live streaming on Friday, because I will be at Motor City Comic Con. So it's a fun event, and looks like I might be having some issues. I'm still live on Facebook. I wonder if there's an issue on YouTube. Give me 1 second, as I'm still here. I'm not going anywhere, but I'm trying to see if there's some kind of issue going on, because I see some funny things with my numbers. So I wonder if, no, looks like I'm there. Yep, I see myself on the YouTube. I know the topic that I'm talking about today, especially with it having in the title, YouTube does not love at all, the least bit. But it's important to talk about, again, because so many people just don't believe the truth. So I'm at least glad that someone of renown on this particular issue is honest about what they're doing. So we'll talk about that article today. But anyway, this weekend I'll be in Motor City Comic Con. It's in Novi. So if you're in the Metro Detroit area, I'll be in Artist Alley. Under my name I think it's, if you look for my name, I don't know if my name, I don't think it's under Christina L. Barr. I think it's under Ninja Dust Publishing. So if you want to find me, I'm in Artist Alley. I think I'm like in the second to the last row. So you can find me. You can find my sister. She'll be right next to me. So we'll be there all weekend. We'll unlikely that we'll leave the table much. So whatever time you go, we'll probably be there unless we're on a bathroom break or eating something. We don't walk much around. We usually just kind of stick to doing work. So anyway, if you're there, if you're wondering why I'm there, I sell books, and I write books. I have lots of fiction books. I have a total of 17 books. Two are nonfiction, and the rest are fiction. And someone did ask for me to do like it's kind of a story time to how I got to writing and stuff. So I plan to do that probably tomorrow night, maybe after I get back from Bible study or something. I think I'll do like a live just story time, just how I got into it, and answer some questions if there's some questions. So if you're an aspiring writer, or you're just kind of curious about the process or my process or about what I do, that's something that you guys are more than welcome to join me with the live, and I'll make sure that I look at the chat, etc. As I just kind of bare my soul with the thing I've been loving and doing for the past couple of years. As far as my nonfiction, you guys know that I have this book, of course, God is Blaming Against Abortion, available on Barnes & Noble and also on Amazon, so you guys can go ahead and get your copy today. It covers biology, philosophy, theology, obviously, why we need moral absolutes, and the societal harm of abortion, etc. Just so many different things that it covers. And my sister did the beautiful artwork on this cover. I love this cover. I love looking at it. She did such an amazing job. So I'm so grateful to her for doing that amazing artwork. So yeah, check out my stuff on the website, and also different merch that I have, like the Roe KC boarded, which we're coming up in the year anniversary. We got the Make Crack Whack Again, Vote Trump 2024. I made that after the report about the Biden crack pipes and stuff that they're giving out to people. So anyway, check out different merch at the store. So hello there in the chat. I see you. So let's start off with some memes. You guys know that I like to start off with some things that are funny. And so today I'm starting off with something from G Prime 85, George Alexopoulos. If I can find a comic of his, I like to share him because actually he's one of my sister's favorite artists, actually, but he just does good content anyway. So you got like a weird dude here saying a bunch of crazy stuff, looking like a really extra Trump person with a Confederate flag, and they're just like, who the heck is that? Turns out, oh, look, it's a FBI plant. And so he drew this because there was some kind of white supremacist, I suppose, march or something that happened the other day. And people are like, this doesn't look natural. And then maybe it was or wasn't, but people look at stuff sometimes and are like, that looks like an FBI kind of plant. And so Joe Rogan anyway talked about it, and he's like, where's all the fat people? I was like, what? He's like, this looks so much like a Fed op. And so George drew this. He retweeted the clip of Joe Rogan talking about it, and then that's how this came to be. So that's what I picked for today. So anyway, if you don't follow George, go ahead and check out, I don't know, his Patreon is probably locked, so I wouldn't go to his Patreon. He actually just did he's teaming up with someone to make a comic book, and their GoFundMe, or I don't know if it was GoFundMe, but it was something like a funding site, they or Kickstarter or whatever, but they like hit their campaign goal like within an hour, I think. Just crazy fast, because a lot of people are interested in supporting art. They just really want good things to support, which is good that there's a lot more people really passionate about making more content. And then there's people, that I see within like, Twitter, other places, who want to help support people who maybe their values align, or maybe they're just people who are just unwoke and want to create good content and leave all that other garbage behind, and they want to put their money where their mouth is, and help to support that stuff. And I think that's good, because so many of the brands that we love, that we grew up with, are just no good anymore. Unfortunately, Disney, for example, they keep, going the woke. We talked about the other day how Blue's Clues, how they had a pride parade, and I didn't realize at first when I talked about it that they had beavers with double mastectomies. And I'm like, why is a beaver? There's no other reason to do it other than you want the adults to validate themselves, these weirdos to validate themselves, and it's so strange. But them Transformers had a non-binary transformer and talking to someone else who's non-binary. They're just putting it everywhere, all the stuff, and people just want a good story. So appreciate the stuff that George is doing, Eric July is doing, and I've been a content creator for a long time, making my own stuff. So if you want to see more content that's not this IP that's been corrupted, you got to go and support other people as they try to build a parallel economy. So anyway, George does good stuff, and I will ever be grateful to him for the commission piece that he did for my sister's birthday. She just loves that to pieces. I don't have it on hand right now, but I'll have to post it sometime later. Anyway, let's talk about this Durham Report before we get into the abortion doctor story. So Durham Report has come out, and some people are trying to suppress it like it's a big nothing burger, and maybe it's not as, I don't know, spectacular as some people had. I don't know. We're hoping for. If you're waiting like with bated breath for people to like be arrested, you're just gonna probably die. Like, don't don't expect that there's going to be like real justice in this world. I'm sorry to be cynical. Yeah, if you're waiting for a bunch of arrests and you're one of those Durham is coming people, it just wasn't ever going to be like that ever. And the FBI had a statement after the report came out that was not good enough. They said the conduct in 2016 and 2017 that Special Counsel Durham examined was the reason that the current FBI leadership already implemented dozens of corrective actions, which have now been in place for some time. Had those reforms been in place in 2016, the missteps identified in the report could have been prevented. This report reinforces the importance of ensuring the FBI continues to do its work with the rigor, objectivity, and professionalism the American people deserve and rightly expect. So I'm like, they're like, oh no, we already fixed the problem, so it's not a big deal. Just ignore it. Okay. No one believes that in the least bit. The same guy, it's not the same president, but when this stuff first started going down with Obama, like his vice president, right, who's done shady stuff and been corrupt for a long time, is now the president now, and these people know that it's kind of like a never-ending cycle as far as them working in DC, doing things in DC. There's no real punishments for a lot of things. You scratch somebody's back, they'll scratch yours. And there's punishment for if you believe the wrong sort of thing and you're not well connected enough, sure, but I'm sorry. If you're waiting for some kind of like profound justice in the situation with, Trump, it's not going to be there, though. It does seem to be like widely covered. Jake Tepper at least said this.
Regardless, the report is now here. It has dropped, and it might not have produced everything of what some Republicans hoped for. It is, regardless, devastating to the FBI, and to a degree, it does exonerate Donald Trump.
So, someone had, I saw Ben Shapiro retweet a post that, I think it was Ben Shapiro. Yeah, for Piers Morgan. Let me share my screen really quick because I didn't screenshot it. So let me share this with you guys really quickly because I thought this was there's a lot of vindication right now. So, someone said, I want to hear Piers Morgan discuss the Durham FBI findings and how that plays into his view of how Trump has acted since the whole thing started. And he said, I'll tell you now, the findings make shameful readings and confirm President Trump was the victim of a shocking stitch-up by the FBI and much of the media over the Russia collusion nonsense. And yes, it does explain his fractious relationship with those who fueled it. So, glad At least for that, I guess. But people, when Trump is saying they're the enemy of the people, or just has such a bad relationship with them, like, to me, it's already always been obvious and at least justifiable from his point of view. Now, what I don't get is sometimes if they cozy up to him, he'll still, like, oh, like, oh yeah, here's my good side. Let's sit down and chat, and then they'll just go and do their own thing and butcher him in their writing. So I don't get that about him. Um, I don't get that, but yeah, he's always had good reason to act hostile toward these people, and they've always excused themselves. They're like, well, we just have to be different because Trump is so different, and I talked about this last week, and I said so many people, when Trump was first running, they were concerned about how he would transform the country and the damage that he would possibly do to the country, democracy, etc. And I'm like, there has been major damage done, but what role have you done in the damage being created? I think maybe we talked about this on Friday, because I think I was talking about the Anderson Cooper monologue after the Trump town hall. And if you look at how they gave themselves permission to act, permission to fight against Trump, permission to color outside the lines of their integrity and ethics, how they've just been consumed with their hatred of him, that they're willing to excuse anything. The idea of, like, gosh, what's that atheist name who said he would he didn't care if Hunter Biden had dead kids on his laptop or something like that. He didn't care that there was, like, a collusion with, like, big tech to suppress a story, because at the end of the day, he thought it was more important that Trump wasn't the president. But I'm like, because they thought he was so much of a threat. But I'm like, if everyone is willing to do so much to stop a person, is it really the man who's such a threat, or is it the system that is such a threat? I and is it, and if people can't hold the system accountable, or just flat out won't hold the system accountable, who's really the big problem right now? He's just a man. Like, literally, he's just a man. Like, so much power people gave to Trump, like, unnecessarily. People gave him the power to destroy their families, to break up relationships, people they knew their whole lives they don't want to speak to anymore, over politics. Like, their every thought's consumed about Trump and fitting people into the, did you vote for him or did you not vote for him? Trump didn't make you do that. That's a decision that you made. So, granted, he was the president of the United States, and he very well could be again, but that's only so much power. Power to press to enter in a code and have a nuclear strike. Yes, that is a lot of power. But he didn't make you lose your mind. He didn't make you do that. He didn't put a gun to your head and say, go crazy, foaming at the mouth, mad. He didn't make you do that. He didn't make you abandon your ethics. He didn't make you waste millions of dollars of taxpayer money on useless investigations because you hated his guts. That's what you people did. He didn't make you suppress information and try to coordinate with big tech and suppress speech of real things going on, of real things that people were saying that were truthful. He didn't make you hide information because you thought some information was too important for Americans to know. He didn't make you do that. Those are decisions that different levers of power decided to enact and do, etc. So you can have your issues with him, but who did you become in your opposition against him is the more important question. Like, people talk about, like, lesser of two evils. I'm not sure why you think that Trump is the more evil of the two. Not sure in the least bit. You want better, you be better. You want better, you be better. I'm gonna read a bit of the Daily Wire article about the Durham Report. FBI offered to pay steal $1 million for anti-Trump evidence, paid possible Russian spy despite knowing his info was bad. FBI offered to pay Christopher Steele, the author of the infamous anti-Trump dossier, up to $1 million for evidence linking Donald Trump to Russia, and paid Steele's primary subsource hundreds of thousands of dollars even after the source was unable to provide evidence for any of his claims, according to a report from special counsel John Durham. Embattled FBI agent Brian Alton traveled to Rome to meet with Steele on October 3rd, 2016, and made the offer despite knowing that his dossier relied primarily on one person or subsource. The Bureau then paid that subsource, Igor Danchenko, $220,000. Even after Danchenko was unable to provide evidence for a single one of his claims. More shockingly, the FBI had significant evidence that Danchenko was himself tied to Russian intelligence. It had closed a counterintelligence investigation into him in 2011 only because agents mistakenly believed he had left the country. The FBI investigated Danchenko as a possible Russian spy from 2009 to 2011 after a colleague at the Brookings Institution, the left-leaning think tank where he worked, told the FBI that Danchenko raised the prospect of paying him for classified information if the colleague joined the Obama administration. A second Brookings employee also told the FBI he suspected Danchenko of being connected to the Russian intelligence. It became a full-fledged investigation when the FBI realized that Danchenko was a known associate of the two other espionage suspects, had contacts with known Russian intelligence officers, and had since he wanted to join the Russian diplomatic service. He also told another person that he worked on special matters for Russian army and that his Russian passport listed him as connected to the Russian military intelligence service. Danchenko bought a one-way ticket out of the country but never boarded the flight. The FBI mistakenly thought he had left the country and closed the investigation as a result. It later realized its mistake and considered reopening the investigation, but inexplicably never did. 5 years later, when the FBI tried to use him as the main piece of evidence that Trump was connected to Russia, that history was readily available in the FBI's computer system. Even so, during the first week of Trump's presidency, it granted Danchenko's immunity and interviewed him for 3 days. Danchenko was not able to provide any corroborative evidence related to any substantive allegation contained in the Steele reports, and critically was unable to corroborate any of the FBI's assertions contained in the Carter page FISA applications, according to the Durham Report. Nevertheless, the following of January 2017 interviews, Crossfire Hurricane leadership reached out to WFO to begin the recruitment of Danchenko as a paid source. Kevin Helson, an FBI agent who served on as Danchenko's handler, filled out a confidential source application incorrectly, stating that there was no derogatory information about him. Helson later said he disregarded the evidence against Danchenko because a Baltimore special agent who worked on that probe told him it was hearsay at best, but that Baltimore agent adamantly told Durham that she had said no such thing. After all, the information came directly from the Brookings employee who was the target of the pitch for classified information. The FBI's CHS Validation Management Unit is tasked with vetting sources, and it intervened to warn against using him as a source. A VMU analyst was strongly of the opinion that Danchenko was connected to Russian intelligence. In addition to the Baltimore probe, Danchenko's background and employment history had noted inconsistencies and omissions. His assessed motivation for providing information to the FBI had changed. His immigration applications omitted certain derogatory information and contained inconsistencies and falsehoods. And despite his concerns for his personal safety, he traveled frequently to Russia before becoming a CHS. Danchenko also demonstrated knowledge of tradecraft and made commentary statements, and much of the information he provided appeared to be hearsay that he was unable, despite requests, to validate, the report said. Durham wrote that Helson and WFO ignored nearly all of the MU's recommendations and continued to operate Danchenko as a CHF until WFO was ordered to close Danchenko in October 2020. In total, the FBI paid Danchenko approximately $220,000 during the 3.5 years that Danchenko was a CHS, even as the FBI pursued Carter Page and Michael Flynn, both Americans connected to Trump who worked in politics and geopolitical affairs. Helson was dismissive about Russian national Danchenko's activities. Nelson stated in sum that the fact Danchenko comes off as a Russian spy is describing half the population of Washington, D.C., Durham wrote. Top brass were bizarrely adamant about paying Danchenko, to the point that even after Durham began investigating FBI misconduct in the Trump probe, FBI brass proposed paying him $300,000 more. The counterintelligence executive managers at WFO and the FBI headquarters resisted efforts to have Danchenko close as a source. Instead, management supported continued payments to him, requiring FBI headquarters approval of sizable amounts of money, and insisted that Danchenko was very valuable to the FBI's counterintelligence program, Durham wrote. While he was being paid by the FBI, Danchenko was also being paid by a front company owned by a Russian national in the D.C. area, despite doing no work for it. As part of an apparent visa scheme, he had lost his job, and therefore his visa and Steele's company, Orbis, couldn't get him a U.S. visa because it was a British company. The company agreed to sponsor his visa, and Orbis paid it as a pass-through. The DNC and Hillary Clinton campaigns had their lawyer hire research firm Fusion GPS to investigate Trump, which then paid Steele, who in turn paid Danchenko. It is extremely concerning that the FBI failed to deal with prior unresolved counter-espionage case on Danchenko, given Danchenko's known contacts with the Russian intelligence officers and his documented prior pitch for classified information. The Crossfire Hurricane team's failure to properly consider and address the espionage case prior to opening Danchenko as a CHS is difficult to explain, particularly given their awareness that Danchenko was the linchpin to the uncorroborated allegations contained in the Steele reports, he added. Indeed, the assistant director for counterintelligence at FBI headquarters throughout thought Danchenko was being paid for information he was providing that corroborated Steele dossier reporting, which of course was not the case because Danchenko never produced any such evidence. So yeah, just crazy waste of time. The Russia investigation all started because of Hillary Clinton stuff, and they knew it was garbage. They pushed the garbage. The media kept pushing and pumping, and they get like people like Adam Schiff, who knew he was lying through his teeth, other officials that were lying through their teeth or skirting around stuff or being coy or just overselling because they didn't like Trump, and they liked how it was riling up their base, the people who hated him. And there's people still to this day who think that he's a Russian asset. You know, there's pictures people make of like him making out with Vladimir Putin, you know, on horseback, shirtless, and just kind of crazy stuff. And it all built a narrative to undermine the authority of the incoming president, and not just the incoming president, man, who was a president. So if you don't think that that was awful and terrible, and that these people should be held accountable, I don't know what's wrong with you. But do I think that anyone will be like seriously held accountable? No, not really. I think the best you can do is vote in an appropriate way, but unfortunately not enough people are kind of plugged in to know what's going on. So sorry to be all cynical, guys. Sorry to be all cynical, but that's just the way our world is today. I'm sorry. At the White House, they did kind of like just dodge.
What is the White House reaction to Special Counsel Durham's report on how the FBI handled the Trump-Russia probe?
I would leave it to the Department of Justice to speak to.
The president talks often about how he wants the DOJ and FBI to remain independent and above the fray. That report seems to reflect the opposite. Does he agree with Special Counsel Durham that there needs to be wholesale changes at the FBI?
Again, that is with the Department of Justice. That's not something that I'm going to speak from the podium. As you just stated in your question, we believe in an independent Department of Justice. That's what the president said when he was running, and that's what the president has said the last 2 years. Thank you so much. I'll see you guys in Japan.
Funny how she said that's what he said. That's what he ran on. That is not at all what he believes, though. Not in the least bit. Not in the least bit. And there's been all kinds of different stories that we can bring up to debunk that situation with Biden. No, he does not believe in an independent Justice Department. Not in the least bit. Not in the least bit. Okay, yeah. So I'm sure there'll be more to come, more to talk about and digest in this particular topic, but we're going to move on. Again, I will be premiering my interview that I had with Riley Gaines tonight, and I want to show you just a little bit of it. It's just a little snippet, because this is a part where you can see that I was a bit flabbergasted.
Leah Thomas's teammates, the female swimmers at University of Pennsylvania I talked to, at great lengths about this because this is something they really dealt with every single day. What they went through is criminal. They were forced every week to go to mandatory LGBTQ education meetings to learn about how just by being cisgender, they were oppressing Leah Thomas. When they were concerned about the locker room and they sent an email to their administration alongside their parents, their administration responded back with, and I swear I have a screenshot of it, their administration responded back with, if you feel uncomfortable seeing male genitalia, here's some counseling resources that you
that you can go to get help. Yeah, so that's what she said afterwards. And gosh, I'm sorry that the sound was so much louder than I am, because I was the sound went on. I was like, oh my gosh. I don't have a mixer in front of me, so yeah, but I was surprised. Well, I guess not surprised, but it did obviously shock me. But to make those girls go through a training to berate them because they're just women, when people, if people talk to you about cisgender privilege, you've got to know they just mean like regular stuff. They mean regular stuff. Like, you can, as a matter of fact, there's a, I don't know how easy you find this, but if you look up cisgender privilege, there was one list that I found, and this person interviewed like Katie Couric, so they're not like super random, but I have a link to that in an article that I have about BLM somewhere on my website. But it lists stuff like you go to the bathroom and you don't have to worry about going to the, like, it's not some kind of internal conflict or outside conflict, but I guess it is now. Because now there's other people coming to our bathrooms who don't belong. So when BLM said stuff like, we want to dismantle cisgender privilege, it's like, what do you mean by that? That's what we're seeing. This dismantling of the cisgender privilege of, oh, we have a sex segregated space that we can enjoy as women. Oh, that's cisgender privilege. Let us dismantle that. Because if someone says they're a woman and they're really a man, it doesn't matter. They get to go in your bathroom. They get to go to the prison. They get to go in your spas. They get to go in your wherever we're dismantling the system. It could be like you're dating someone and you don't have to worry about coming clean about your genitals. And I'm like, unfortunately for some people, that's they don't have that, I guess, cisgender privilege. They might have to explain some things or talk about some things, or it burns when they pee or something. But yeah, if you're dating someone, you should, and you're trans, and I'm assuming you're convincing, or otherwise people would just know. You should let them know up front, because people do care about having kids and all that kind of stuff, and how they'll have sex. So you shouldn't hide that for it to be an eventual conversation in the relationship. That people need to know that up front. So there's that. Cisgender, when people talk about that stuff and cis privilege, it's just dumb, normal stuff. I saw something on the list like, you can go find shoes of your size. And I'm like, that's not always a thing I can do. It depends what store I'm going to. If I go to like the big girl store, yeah, they got shoes in my size, but if I just go to like a regular, like all size shoe store or something, unless it's like a huge department store with, just big sections everywhere, there's not as much variety. Cause I'm like an 11 wide, my foot is. So, it's, just because you wear like a 14 and you want it to be in high heels, like, come on. That's not a privilege. It's just life. Just go make your own shoes or find your own niche or whatever and make money with that small market. People do that all the time. That you don't need a lot of customers. You just need to have like good prices, good marketing, and take it to your niche and make some bank or something. But, just complain. Thank you guys in the comments. See your comments. Thank you very much. Okay, so anyway, so it'll be on tonight at 7 o'clock. So please make sure. Mm, you know what? Let me push it to 8. I'm gonna say 8 p.m. Eastern time. I did not schedule it yet, so I've just decided it'll be 8 p.m. Eastern time. So yeah, you can check the whole interview tonight. It's maybe about, the actual conversation is about 30 minutes long, but I included some other things that make it about 40 minutes. So it'll make for some good streaming TV. So anyway, let's move on to this article about uh, Mr. Hern, who's a famous abortion doctor. He literally wrote a textbook. I actually quoted him in my book. Of course, God is blatantly against abortion, which he's blatantly for abortion. But so you're like, why did you quote him? Because he had a line that he wrote instead about if you were sexually assaulted and how you need to get. I'm trying not to say the R word. If you are sexually assaulted, you need to go get actual care and treatment for that. And he did mention how abortion is not a cure for that. So that's just something I wanted people to keep in mind. I do cover like except the exceptions in my book, and so I could only cover so much stuff or go into so much depth, but that's one section I did take a lot of time. I obviously you could take more time, but I didn't want to shy away from the tough topics in this book either. So that I did talk about that. So I did quote him in my book, but he is someone who's like pro-abortion the whole time. And there's about 10% of Americans who believe that there should be no restrictions. And I think that's scary high in my opinion. Even though, it's not a plurality, it's not a majority, I still think that's a lot. But there are politicians who will not condemn 9-month abortions. Stacey Abrams was asked point blank, wouldn't, condemn 9-month. You had Beto O'Rourke who just be like, just trust the woman, just trust the woman. He was even asked about like voting for bills about newborns who survived abortion and giving them medical care, and he's just like, I would just say trust the woman. And I'm like, that's so beta, it's so simp, it's so it's not a moral position. You're not cool because you're saying just trust the woman. You're just being a coward. Like you can't even like give a real opinion after the child has survived their attempted murder. Like you can't say anything after that. You're like, it's legal, it's not murder. It's not legal everywhere, is it? But it's an unjust killing. So if you don't like my language, it is what it is. But this particular abortion doctor has been doing it for like 50 years, for the whole entire time of Roe v. Wade. So it's one of the reasons why I guess they wanted his perspective on it. But if you talk about it's funny how when you have conversations about this topic, you'll say like, oh, I'm against abortion, and they'll be like, well, most abortions are done, like 90% of abortions are done like in the first trimester or something. And it's like, one, just FYI, if you get numbers from the CDC and stuff, like states are not required to report abortion data, just FYI. If you look up information on the CDC, like it's probably missing places like California, for example. That's a big chunk. So you might say, look up something and think there's like 600,000 abortions in the US. Guttmacher Institute has better numbers, and they put it closer to like 1 million. So just keep that in mind when you're looking at data and stuff. But the point is, we don't actually know for sure maybe how much is actually being done. But I believe in protecting life at conception, so I don't, when people jump all the way to like, it happens mostly early, I'm like, okay, I think those are bad too. So I'm like, you're kind of directing the conversation in a way that's irrelevant to me. But they always go to late term, and they're like, and only a couple of these, it's a small percentage happens late term, and people only do this for really, really dire situations. And that's not true. It's not true. And I think that people don't want to think about women doing that or being able to do that but and I understand wanting to give them that benefit of the doubt, but it unfortunately it does happen, and there's already been data to look at women who have late term abortions to prove that. But this article that's in the Atlantic does speak to that. Now, there's also a narrative that people will say, "Oh, well, you guys act like women are just doing this for fun, or they wake up and they all of a sudden they don't want a baby." And no, no, that's your caricature of us. I don't think I've ever heard someone say that, unless it was like in a mocking, sarcastic kind of way. But no, we acknowledge that women may have very dire circumstances that aren't like physical, or where they may feel like they really need to get an abortion. But the question is, does this rise to an occasion that is worthy of killing a child? And I understand you might not think it's a child, but for the sake of argument, you know that I do. It is a child. A child is I mean, there's definitions that literally say it's a human fetus and child of any age, son or daughter of any age. So, we can call it a baby, we can call it a child. Hern just calls it a fetus up into the point of birth, but it is a child. And so if we can, this is a really easy test to see if your abortion is worthy of killing a child. It's called Trot Out the Toddler. And so ask yourself, if it wasn't a fetus in your womb, and if it was like a 2-year-old or something, would that reason be good enough to I don't know, rip off their limbs and suck out their guts or something? Would it, like, so if you couldn't afford, if you feel like you couldn't afford the child or something, that you'd have financial hardship or something, well, let's say it wasn't in your womb, let's say the baby was 2, your child was 2, would you be willing to offer your 2-year-old because times are tough? Would you be willing to offer your 2-year-old because you want to finish college, because you need a new promotion, because you or do they sound like worthy reasons to do that? Trot out a toddler just to test your logic. So anyway, and they'll say that, well, they don't see them as the same. I understand your perception is not the same, and I don't know if I can get you there. I think maybe we can get a lot of people there. There's some people we're not ever going to get there, and are always going to choose to not get there too. But the only difference between your 2-year-old and the 8-month baby in your womb, or 6-month, or 5-month, or 6-week, it's just time. Same person. So anyway, let's some highlights. Let me go ahead and just share my screen. I'm not going to read this whole entire article. I just want to talk about some highlights from it. Which there's been some people pushing back on the narrative from the right about this, because they do mention in the article that there are women who will go get abortions late term, because maybe they had appointments earlier and it was just backed up and they couldn't get one until later. So he works in Colorado. In Colorado, there's no limitations. Colorado sounds like a wild place right now. So there's no limitations on it. So he's been doing this stuff for a while, and with there being restrictions all over the place in different states, there are people who are making appointments and going out to Colorado, where he is, and having late term abortions. He only does late term abortions now. Like, his clinic just didn't have time to do other ones. And so in this article, they cover the process of it. They talk about how they inject the baby with the lethal drug, and to stop their heart, and then how they, prepare the woman for her to dilate, which takes several days. So after they give the baby the lethal injection, the mother will carry the dead baby for a few days until they're ready to get the baby out. And sometimes the baby comes out whole, and sometimes the baby comes out in pieces. They have to rip the baby apart. It depends. And there are the article talks about one mother who, well, a couple women who had, medical diagnosis with their babies, and so they euthanized them. Basically, that they upfront admitted it was euthanasia, and then they said that they would do it again. And I think those are the cases that people mostly think of when there are late term abortions. That there's either the mother needs it to save their life, which doesn't make sense a lot of times because, as I just explained, it takes several days to deliver a late term baby. So if you're having a very, very, very dire, quick medical emergency for yourself and you need the baby out, the best way to do that would be to induce the labor, not to have kill the baby, have it dead and be inside of you for a few days and then like rip it apart if you need to. So when it's some kind of medical reason, it might be because of different diagnoses, maybe like maybe they have a brain issue or something like that. They find out that they're not going to live long afterwards. And I think this is a wrong. Oh, I got it pop up my other screen. I'm sorry. If they find that the baby's like incompatible with life, or they assume that they're not going to live, or the chances are low, and they'll say, well he said it's like BS for them to have to carry the baby, and they'll have the abortion. Now, there are cases where doctors are wrong. There's someone who I'm mutual with on TikTok. Her mother's doctors told her to abort her when she was at 8 months. 8 months, and said that she was going to be super, super deformed. And her mother, for whatever reason, didn't listen to the doctors, and she gave birth to a healthy baby. She was just a dwarf. And she's fine, other than being short. So that's really late to be wrong about something like that. So wrong. But I've heard other stories where different doctors have said that they had really dire diagnoses, and they just waited a little bit longer to give the baby the best kind of shot for life. And sometimes it's turned around, sometimes it's not turned around. Or there's a beautiful story about this baby Ember who passed away. The family knew that the baby was going to pass away. They're probably praying, hoping for a positive diagnosis, but the baby only lived for a couple minutes. But oh my gosh, that the perseverance and the love of the family and how the community just came around them is. If I think about it too much, I'll just begin to cry. It's such a beautiful story. Live action covered, other people covered it, and I did write about it. I did include a piece of it in my book and stuff. So the Baker family, it's a beautiful story. But the reality of the situation is women will get negative diagnoses, and sometimes doctors are wrong, but a lot of times they're also right. So people have a lot of sympathy for women in these circumstances, but again, these are more on the rare side. Now, Dr. Hern actually admitted in their clinic that about half, sometimes more than half, of the women coming in do not have these fatal sort of grim diagnoses for their babies. Now, people would say that just can't be true, which I saw some pro-choice people on Twitter saying it just can't be true, that doctors wouldn't do those sorts of things. Unfortunately, there's a case like called Doe, and which includes like women's health for reasons that you get abortions like late term and stuff. But we like normal people think health, and you think like, oh, the woman's going to die or something. No, it could mean their emotional health, their psychological health, their financial health even. So doctors can interpret that on a very wide range of ways. So if you're thinking it just needs to be like someone's going to die and you need to make a decision, that's not what it is. Or the child like has no brain or something, like that's not what it is. That it could just be that the child has Down syndrome, and there's a lot of babies all over the world who are aborted for having Down syndrome, and that is eugenics, and a lot of the purpose of why the abortion industry got so large. Actually, the idea of eugenics is to breed out suffering, but even like even though Margaret Sanger was a eugenicist, though, she was not even into eugenics the way, I mean, abortion the way that like Alan Guttmacher was and other people who actually took over Planned Parenthood. So we're just in a kind of a sick place in our country. But Dr. Hern also admitted to doing abortions on babies based on sex. He said this at least happened twice. And so that was one particular person I saw in the comments on Twitter said that he's admitting to, that can't be true. He's admitting to a crime. And then someone else who's pro-choice responded to her and they're like, what law are you talking about? So I jumped in. She didn't respond, but I reminded her when Obama was the president of the United States of America, the Congress or the Republicans or whatever, I assume it started in the Congress and tried to move forward or whatever, but they tried to pass a bill against abortion as saying that you can't have an abortion on the basis of sex, and it failed. And so Jake Tapper, he wasn't with CNN at the time, but he asked the White House what was their opinion on it, and the White House, the Obama White House, was happy about it failing because they still felt like there shouldn't be a restriction on women, and they should still have the right. We shouldn't be restricting women's rights at all. So if a woman, and I asked her, and again she didn't respond yet, if you support a woman's choice, a woman's right to choose, what's wrong with this particular choice? Like, I know it's like morally reprehensible, right? But if you're someone who's like, I don't like it, but it should be a woman's choice, like just her blanket reasons, she has her reasons. Like, she can make that decision for whatever it is. Like, I hear people say, well, I don't think abortion should be used as birth control, but it's a woman's choice. Well, what if she chooses to use it for birth control? What do you think they use abortion for? What do you think they use abortion for? Like, if you need an abortion or feel like you need an abortion because you're a Hollywood actress, like what's her name? Keke Palmer. If you do it for your career, to keep advancing your career, don't feel like you can be a working woman and a mom at the time. She's not the only one who's done that, but other actresses of, Michelle Williams got up on stage, had her Golden Globe, and was talking about the importance of abortion access, etc. If they have abortions for that, how is that not birth control? You take birth control because you don't want to be pregnant, you're not ready for a kid, or whatever your reasons. But if you have an abortion for it because you still have those reasons, you're just using it as birth control. Like, unless you have some kind of unforeseen medical emergency or something, you're using it as birth control. I don't understand people who say they don't want to use it as birth control, but they obviously support a woman using it as birth control. I don't understand that. So, yes, he's done sex selective abortions. And Dr. Warren Hern mentions in this article that he sees, like, even if they're not dire medical diagnoses, he just sees abortion and pregnancy as a health issue. Because, and he says that women, anything could go awry with being pregnant, which is true, but that kind of sounds more like an excuse to kind of just justify. And he's had, situations that have kept him up at night. Like one time I think they said it was like the 70s or something, that he pulled out a fetus and the heart was still beating. And so sometimes his mind would go back to that and it would wake him up in the middle of the night. But he's still been doing what he does. Let me read a little bit. Again, I'm not going to read this whole thing. Just want to see if I can find some key stuff. During the first 13 weeks of pregnancy, when about 90% of abortions in America are carried out, the fetus's appearance ranges from a small clot to phlegm to alien-like balls of flesh, which 13 weeks, like, they don't look like a normal baby, like, fully developed, but I don't, at 13 weeks, it's still alien-like, ball of flesh, like, that seems like a still at that point really trying to dehumanize them from, like, if you actually see a picture at 13 weeks, you know, and they move around and they do so much, even at, like, if you go to a sonogram at 14 weeks. I mean, I haven't seen one at 13 or earlier than 14, but man, my nephew Noah, who's so adorable, he's so cute, he's so wonderful, just a chill, happy baby. He has a gap like me, so I'll just go, ah, and then he'll go, ah. You know, they're all my, you know, my nephews and my nieces, they're the light of my world, and I just can't imagine people doing this kind of stuff to babies. At 22 weeks, though, a human fetus has grown to be about the size of a small melon. The procedures that Hern performs result in the removal of a body that, if you saw it, would inspire a sharp pang of recognition. These are the abortions that provide fodder for the gruesome images on protester signs and the billboards along with Midwest highways, images that can be difficult to look at for long. So, he talks about how, again, women have been flocking to him to go see him. His bedside manner is terrible. People say it's expensive, like $6,000 and so on. Some of these people get help to pay for them. Do they do partial cash, partial credit? Which, yeah, the money's good when they do it that late. I think I talked about Kermit Gosnell. Now he would just induce the labors and snip the spines of the babies. That was like standard in his clinic. He got convicted for like 3 babies' deaths. And if you're willing to do it super late, morally, I don't know why people think they're so much different than Gosnell. Just to be frank, if you're willing to do it up to super late, and you could say, well, the baby's already out. Like, if the baby's viable, you don't need to have an abortion on a healthy baby. And when people mention, like, oh no, people would only abort for like really intense medical reasons and stuff, he had a lot of clients. And Gosnell's clinic is not somewhere you would go to if you had a dire medical emergency. I'd assume you'd probably go to a hospital if you had a dire medical emergency. You know, and I'm not saying people aren't in desperate situations, but women will abort healthy women will abort viable, healthy babies. They will, and they do. Here's a woman who talked about eugenics. I put my baby down. Kate Carson, who'd gotten an abortion at Hern's clinic in 2012, told me she'd been 35 weeks into a much wanted pregnancy when her doctor diagnosed multiple brain anomalies. Carson's daughter, the doctor said, would have trouble walking, talking, holding her head up, and swallowing. It's euthanasia. That's the kind of killing this is, she said. But I would do it again 1,000,000 times if I had to. So, that's rough. So he talked about women who come in who have, you know, fatal diagnoses, and that's something, you know, that's a lot more morally gray that people have a tougher time talking about. But people don't want to believe that people do this stuff on, again, healthy babies. Here we go. We'll start here. Once a staffer, let me start here. Abortions that come after devastating medical diagnosis can be easier for some people to understand, but Hern estimates that at least half, and sometimes more, of the women who come to his clinic do not have those diagnoses. He and his staff are just sympathetic to other circumstances. Many of the clinic's teenage patients receive later abortions because they had no idea they were pregnant. There's that. Which we know there's been studies of looking at women who have late term abortions. Some women don't know that they're pregnant until late. Some have sexual assault victims ignore their pregnancies or feel too ashamed to see a doctor. That's can happen too. Once a staffer named Catherine told me a patient opted for the later abortion because her husband had killed himself and she was suddenly broke. There isn't a single woman who has ever written on her bucket list that she wants to have a late abortion. Catherine said, there is always a reason. And again, they always, pro-choice people always act like, oh, they throw out this, you guys think that they just, did it on a whim or are doing it for fun. I don't believe that. I don't think most people who are pro-life believe that. Again, but you have to ask, is the reason, especially that late, justifiable to kill a viable, healthy child that you could give up for adoption? And I don't think adoption is like the solution, but it is an option to not kill a child. Like, if they can live, why not at that point just let them live? Why not just let them live? The reason doesn't really matter to Hern. Medical viability for a fetus or its ability to survive outside of the uterus is generally considered to be somewhere from 24 to 28 weeks. Hern, though, believes that the viability of a fetus is determined not by gestational age, but by a woman's willingness to carry it. So that's super not what viability is. So if she wants him dead, gotta take him out. He applies the same principle to all of his prospective patients. If he thinks it's safer for them to have an abortion than to carry or deliver the baby, he'll take the case, usually up to around 32 weeks, with some rare later exceptions because of the increased risk of hemorrhage and other life-threatening conditions beyond that point. And even within the abortion rights community, Hern's position is considered a hard-lined one, and talks about someone who leads Catholics for Choice, who isn't into it that deep that late. But honestly, I do think that though we're probably listening to this and discussing this and think that Hern's position is really extreme. I see that as the progression of where we're going and or where the pro-choice movement is headed. And they don't want to ban late term that late, but they'll say it doesn't happen. They don't want to say, oh, basically they'll be willing to say, yes, a woman can kill her baby at 9 months just to say, just to get out of trying to stop it. They don't want a ban. They want women to be able to do that up until basically the point of birth. And no, I don't think that someone is literally having abortion up until the point of birth. I guess I wouldn't say it wouldn't happen. I mean, there are people who leave their babies who are born in dumpsters. So, 32 weeks, that's late, man. That is definitely viable. Goes into his life a little bit. Trying to find some of the more gruesome things. He had bad dreams too. In the 1970s, physicians did not induce fetal demise during abortion, and once or twice, by fetal demise, they mean like the lethal injection that they put into the baby to make their heart stop. Once or twice during a procedure at 15 or 16 weeks, he used forceps to remove a fetus with a still beating heart. The heart thumped for only a few seconds before stopping, but for a long while after, a vision of that fetus would wake Hern from sleep. He could see it in his mind, the inches-long body and its heart beating. In one dream, Hern angled his own body to shield his staff from catching a glimpse. Other people might have decided that this work wasn't worth the haunting images, the pricks of conscience They might have to quit, but for Hern, the psychological stress of the work was necessary cost of helping patients. He saw it as his job to carry some of the emotional weight. Over time, that stress became easier to manage. He stopped needing to compose himself between procedures. The bad dreams went away. Jeez. Can you imagine? Now, it's amazing what humans can get used to and can justify within their own minds. Oh, here we go. During that conversation, the ones that following it, I prodded for cracks in Hern's certainty. At one point, I thought I'd found one. Hern had told me about a woman who'd sought an abortion because she didn't want to have a baby girl. I thought he had refused, but when I followed up to ask him why, I learned that I had misunderstood. Hern said he had done abortions for sex selection twice. One was for this woman and once for someone who'd desperately wanted a girl. It was their choice to make, he explained. So if a pregnant woman with no health issues comes to the clinic, say at 30 weeks, what would you do? I asked Hern once. The question irked him. Every pregnancy is a health issue, he said. There's a certain risk of death from being pregnant, period. So kind of gaslighting in a way. I don't know if gaslighting is the right word to use there, but it's a dishonest framing though, because the issue isn't about the health being a risk. Like, he knows the issue, and the reason why they wanted the abortion was because one person didn't want a girl and one person wanted a girl or whatever. So he's willing to do the abortion for sex selection, and then switches it to, well, it's a health issue because they're all health issues. But that's not why the women wanted the abortion. So, kind of messed up. I want to see if there was another really gruesome part that I wanted to get to, but I guess that's pretty much the gist. Like, you guys can go, like I said, I'm not going to read the whole thing. Obviously, I'm not reading the whole thing to you guys live here, but people do have abortions on healthy, viable babies. And again, some women, maybe, they wanted it earlier and they couldn't get it done earlier because of money, because of time, because backlogs are backed up or whatever. It doesn't make it suddenly right. But I will say this. A lot of people want to have a compromise for abortion at weeks, like it should be 12 weeks, or should be 10 weeks, or should be with heartbeats, or should be at 15, or should be a viability, etc. To me, that doesn't make a lot of sense. Like, if you're trying to consider like the welfare of the child and what they might feel or what they might be aware of, etc., I guess I get it from that front. But I don't believe that you're only harmed if you're aware of the harm. And again, it's the same baby at 6 weeks, at 6 weeks and 24 weeks or 32 or whatever. It's the same baby. It's just your perception of that baby that has changed. If it within time, it will be out of view and have its own social security number and all that stuff. So it's not any less human. It's not any less of a baby. It just is what it is. A human being whose life started at conception and is on a self-determined path to being you and I, our journey started at conception. So I think, if you go by weeks and you say, well, it's okay if a woman has an abortion at 6 weeks, even though her reason might be, I can't afford it, or my boyfriend broke up with me or whatever, and those are her reasons. But what if it's those same reasons at week 24 or 32? So if it was justifiable to kill the baby at 6 weeks, why is it no longer justifiable to do it at 24? So I think the only two consistent positions are my position of you protect life at conception, or Hern's position, of, or you don't even have to say conception, because you mostly don't find out until it's got about a heartbeat anyway. Like, it's, you detect it and it's there, and basically by the time you find her pregnant, it's basically over with, you know? So let's say it's even there, you know, heartbeat bill. But it really should be conception. Either super, super early like that, or it's gotta, or super, super late, or no restrictions. If it's her choice, it's her choice, and her body, it's her choice, and she's in however late, whatever. But people are like, that's really, really extreme. Why is it extreme? Because it's killing a baby. And you know it is. You know it is. And it becomes more real to you the later it gets. But there's people out here, besides Dr. Hern, who's actually doing it, who are fighting for those late-term abortions. Now, the bigger the baby is, you know, they do things with those bodies. They just do. You know, and the procedure itself is expensive. You know, what's the name was making, you know, about $10,000 to $15,000 a day in his clinic. Gosnell. And that was some years back, you know? So like it was early 2000s, maybe was it 2011, 2012, maybe some time around there, maybe earlier. So someone's saying bodily autonomy, period. Oh, there you go. I see some interesting comments. Yeah, bodily autonomy. If you're going to argue bodily autonomy, I don't see how if that's what you're prioritizing, again, I don't see how you don't get to Dr. Hern's opinion that you should be able to have the baby up until like the point of birth, basically, which most people would think is monstrous because, you know, what's the difference between the baby like 5 minutes out of your womb and inside of it? Like, what's the ethical difference other than it being inside of you? But the bodily autonomy argument, let's just be frank, it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. Nobody really believes that. During the lockdowns and the jab and stuff, they wanted to coerce you to get like jabbed because they didn't care about your bodily autonomy. What about guys who have to sign up for the draft? They don't care about your bodily autonomy. What about men who have to pay child support? They don't care about your bodily autonomy. And your organs are all inside of you and you go to work and you make your paycheck and then they take it to have to pay for your kid, or they make you pay for your taxes and people's health care and social programs about people who you have no responsibility for. So people actually don't care about bodily autonomy. It's not absolute. And it's just not. Like, people have laws against hard drugs. I can't, and more importantly, I can't use my bodily autonomy to go kill another person and say I did it for the sake of my bodily autonomy. It's an argument that doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense. So there are people who get pregnant despite taking precautions, but about 50% of people who have abortions weren't on birth control at the time when they were impregnated. So Equal Rights Institute just put out a TikTok about this, but they made the point of, even if you gave everybody like free contraception, it wouldn't stop all abortions. At most maybe would stop half, because some people, whether people have access to birth control or don't bother at all. Some people don't even like it at all. People will still not take it, or it'll still fail or whatever, but it's still not a good reason to take someone else's life. The question is, are you taking a life? And it's undoubtedly a human life. So if you don't believe it is, I don't know what else to do for you, but it's just a denial of reality. Now, if you think it's okay to kill other human beings, then, you know, it is what it is. If you think that's okay. But if you think it's okay to kill some humans and not other humans, I question why that is. I question why that is. I don't know what kind of conversations y'all having in the comments, but I'm about to end my show. Y'all have to take it somewhere else. But thank you guys for joining me today. I hope you guys enjoyed the content. Again, I'll have my interview with Riley Gaines up tonight. So I'll go ahead and schedule it when I get off of here, so you guys can wait for it to premiere. I'll have it on YouTube and Facebook. Also, please check out my book, of course, God's Blatantly Against Abortion. And I would usually argue against abortion without using any sort of scriptures or anything like that. But I really got annoyed with people saying stuff like, life starts at first breath, and Numbers 5 is about abortion, and all just kind of stuff that wasn't true. So I started making reply videos and then articles, and then eventually just morphed into a book. So you can get this on Amazon. It deals with basically our political landscape of the day, and then it goes into the biology, and then it goes into philosophy, and then it goes into the theology after all that other stuff is set up first. So, and then it gets into why we need moral absolutes, why it goes into separation of church and state, explains that, explains the societal harm of abortion, and that we need to choose redemption over condemnation. I didn't write this to condemn any woman to hell about the choices that she made, but I do want abortion to end because I do believe it is a very evil thing. So anyway, it's available on Amazon. It's available on Barnes & Noble. And thank you guys for buying it. And thank you guys for continuing to buy it. And God bless you. Also, check out different merch that we have at blacktnews.com. This is one of my favorite shirts that I got that I'm gonna have to order pretty soon myself. Pro-choice men are sus, as in suspect, because I don't trust pro-choice men still. I don't trust your motivations, bruh. Also got the black tea mugs, the My Money My Business, which I also made because of the abortion issue, because I got sick of people saying like, it's not your business. I'm like, you guys are trying to appeal the Hyde Amendment. How's that not my business? Like, you're literally lobbying for people to try to pay for this stuff that we find like morally irreprehensible. So anyway, check out different merch. And again, if you like what I do here, please consider leaving a donation at blacktnews.com/donate. God bless you guys, and I will see you later.